Welcome to the Higher Ed Retire Podcast with your host, Greg Shepard. Greg is a fee-only financial advisor who specializes in helping those in higher education to take control of their retirement. Since 2001, Greg has helped employees all over the country make the most of their retirement plans.
Hey folks, Greg Shepard here, Higher Ed Retire Podcast. I tell you what, this is a podcast that's going to be a little bit of a repeat of one I've done in the past regarding fiduciary. What is a fiduciary? The fiduciary standard when it comes to advisors in your higher ed retirement plans. It's going to be a little bit different than the one I did prior because I'm going to relay information kind of in story form. 2 scenarios or stories that I have for you, live scenarios. And also, one more thing, a lot of this information will piggyback off a podcast I just did regarding TIAA traditional. If you haven't heard that one and you are an employee that has money in TIAA, listen to that podcast, okay? It's all about TIAA traditional. That's the fixed account and why sometimes it cannot be a good idea. All right, folks, for those of you that don't know me, again, name is Greg Shepard. I've been dealing with higher ed retirement plans for 20 years. So if you find yourself a little bit in the weeds during this podcast, by all means, you're not going to be the first one. Go ahead and contact me, okay? And I have no problem at all, even though you're not a client, helping you out. Email greg@shepardfinancial.com. Shepard is S-H-E-P-A-R-D. Phone number, Kansas City office, 913-521-2381. I get this question sometimes just because my office is in Kansas City. Guess what? With technology, you don't have to be. It's a lot easier, as we all realize, to deal with people all over the country, as I do. I deal with many institutions all over the country. So what I want to do is share with you a couple stories and things that I just think of. I don't have anything written down, just off the top of my head, so forgive me as I stumble through this. So let's start off with the first story here. Now, again, we're talking about a fiduciary. What is a fiduciary? This is one in my industry that makes decisions on your behalf that is in your best interest. So, for example, when I get a client, the first thing I do when they become a client is I justify why they're in a better position with my services, with my program, in terms of costs, in terms of service, in terms of investment products. I have to be able to show people that I have put them in a better position. Okay, so I got to justify the fiduciary standard. So, first scenario here, I have a lady that's a client now. She was a prospect at the time, of course. She was referred to me by another client at a certain university. She had been at this university for 25 years, around there. Fantastic job of accumulating wealth over the course of time. Folks, she wasn't in a high-paying job, high-paying position. She was tenured, but she had amassed over $900,000. Her husband passed away, so she was by herself. So the reason I mention that is she didn't have anybody to bounce ideas off of or anyone really to share information or ideas with. The only people she had in this case for this reason were the reps over at TIAA. Now, the reason I share this story with you regarding a fiduciary is that this lady, as I've spoken about in that podcast regarding TI Traditional, she had 100% of her account in TI Traditional. Now, if you want to know the downfalls, the pitfalls of this, listen to that other podcast. This was an issue where it caused some emotional grief with the client because she found out once she became a client of mine, I relayed information to her that her $900,000 plus were locked up. It was locked up in that account, and the only way we can get it out is over a course of time, over a course of 9 years. She didn't know this, okay? Let me repeat that. 25 years, one university, she didn't realize the restrictions and parameters around her account. To make it even worse, she had sat across the table from TIAA reps, and she was never told this. So you know the old adage, you don't know what you don't know. She didn't even know to ask the question, is this money liquid when I retire? Okay? If he or she at TIAA were a fiduciary, okay, if they wanted to do what's in the best interest of the client, he or she at TIA would have said, ma'am, maybe we should think about diversifying around the TIAA traditional account. And this is why. because the CREF money's liquid, the TIA traditional, you have to pull out over 9 years. How long did that take me? Okay. And if that sentence would have been spoken to this client, she would have had a different financial picture at retirement. Okay. Don't be fooled that these people, they're good people, the outfits at TIA and Fidelity, okay, both they're the big boys when it comes to the retirement plans for higher education. Great outfits. I've been dealing with both of them for many, many years. I have clients that are strictly TIA, not many. Most of my clients are strictly Fidelity. I have money with clients at both institutions. Good people, good outfits, but don't be fooled. The people you're talking to work for that company. How can you get an unbiased, truly unbiased opinion or advice when you have somebody talking to you working for one company? Now, is it an analogy, a silly example I give? I've told a few clients this, prospects at the time. And this was actually sent down to me, inherited, I guess, from my father, who's been in the business since the 70s. Always ask the person you're sitting across the table, who pays your light bills? I know it sounds silly, but think about it. So the rep from TIA, if you were to ask them this question, he or she would say, well, when I'm at my office, TIAA pays my light bills. Bingo! Now you know who's calling the shots. Fidelity reps, ask them the same thing. Do you pay your light bills when you're at the office? Well, no, I don't. The company pays for it. Bingo! Now you know who's calling the shots. If you were sitting across from my table right now, and if you were to ask me who pays the light bills, I would tell you, well, you could certainly ask my employees, because I always ask them to turn the lights off, because when you leave the lights on, it costs me money. I pay for the light bills. Therefore, I don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to advice between TIA and Fidelity. I, as an independent advisor, true fiduciary advisor, can give you unbiased advice. I pay the light bill. It's not just me, okay? So when you're in service, out of service, meaning terminated service or retirement, I believe it's in your best interest to find that independent fiduciary, fee-only advisor. That's what we are. That's what I am, okay? You can't accomplish that with reps from TIA and Fidelity. Okay, let's keep going here. Next scenario. This is a client, now a client, but obviously was a prospect at one time. Recently came on board within a year, within the last 12 months. He actually found me through these podcasts and webinars alike. I'm not sure which one he found me on, but he did find me through this medium. Very simply put, he had met with TIA reps before in the past, and they kept trying to influence him. That's not the right word. Maybe talk him into doing these lifetime incomes, which he knew enough that scenario was probably not, or that strategy was probably not in his best interest. He didn't really feel comfortable with that. And so, again, he was astute enough, forward-thinking enough, that he thought, well, maybe I want to talk to somebody outside of TIAA, like an independent advisor. Then he ran across my stuff, my podcast and webinars. He called me, and we had a chit-chat about this situation. So it's not just me being an independent advisor. There are others like me, okay? So for his situation, what we did is we actually comboed at his university. He had a choice of TIA and Fidelity, okay? So what we did is we comboed the two. Now, do you think a rep at TIA or Fidelity would want you, Mr. or Mrs. Employee, to combo the two? Of course not, because that means you're taking money out of one vendor and putting it into the competitor, okay? That ain't going to happen. But again, independent advisor, not a dog in the fight. I don't care. I have no vested interest if my clients are with TIA or Fidelity. So we're looking to get the best products available to you. Now, he also had an ex-employer money over at TIA. We rolled that out to Schwab. So this client now has 3 vendors: Schwab, TIA, Fidelity. There's not a TIA or Fidelity rep in the world that's going to recommend doing that. They're going to want to keep it in-house, of course. I don't blame them for that. They should do that. But you have to be educated. You have to be knowledgeable enough to know what's going on, okay? And that's the purpose of this podcast, is really to give you information so you can make the most educated decision possible. All right, folks, so, that's about it. I want you to understand where advice is coming from. There are other independent advisors like myself, but if you want some help with your situation, by all means, give me a holler here at my office. Phone number 913-521-2381. Email Greg at shepardfinancial.com. Shepard is Shepard. Hit up my website, safinancialservices.com. Folks, there's podcasts there that will help you out on different aspects of your retirement plan, things that you probably don't know about, that you should know about. That's the purpose of the podcast, is to share with you information you will not find, for the most part, anywhere else. All right, folks, thanks for hanging in there today with a short podcast around the fiduciary topic. Greg Shepard, S&A Financial Services, reminding you to take control of your retirement today. Thanks, folks.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Retire Podcast. Just because this episode is over doesn't mean you can't continue your retirement journey. Please visit www.higheredretire.com to see how you can work with Greg or to simply ask him a question. Thanks again.
S&A Financial Services is a registered investment advisor. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and/or tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.